there. You're listening to the Outsourcing Hub podcast, the pod that brings you anything and everything about building great teams in outsourcing. And we promise to share infinite opportunities, news, updates, and trends in the industry. Hosted by the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Infinit-O, Mike Gunyon.
Hi, this is Mike Gunyon. Welcome to the podcast, the Infinit-O podcast. In today's episode, we'll be talking about business process automation. What do we mean when we talk about automation? Does it replace people, or does it potentially integrate within the processes that people perform? And a very important question is, why companies need to automate. What are they thinking about, and what's in it for them, particularly scaling companies that are moving into new markets and so forth. So Flo Lenoir, the head of our people operations and transformation, is once again joining me for this discussion. And hopefully it'll be educational and perhaps a little informative at the same time, and most of all relevant. So hello, Flo. Welcome once again.
Hi, Mike. A pleasure to be back.
Great. So thank you again. And we'll start with sort of opening up things about, what is automation. So Flo, maybe you could start by describing business process automation and a typical automation journey for us.
Thanks, Mike. Automation is an interesting world. It's an interesting word because it is a big word, and it's a word that I guess create maybe a lot of confusion because you may ask 10 companies what automation is for them. They would probably have 10 different answers. What is often common, though, to all companies, especially for the growing ones, is the need for efficiency, is the search for effectiveness and efficiency. And we see this, we've seen it pre-pandemic. That's actually one of the reasons why companies would turn to outsourcing, but we would see it even more with everything that has happened over the past 2 years, with inflation, with uncertainty, with a world that's constantly changing. Who can afford not to do anything? How can companies gain efficiency, protect their margins, offer growth opportunities to a workforce that is requesting to be more and more engaged and is also requesting more and more meaningful work? How to do all of this at scale? That's a question that often comes back as well. Automation is often the obvious answer. Automation is not new, but if we think of the application of it in businesses, it's at scale. That's probably where we see the drive and the buzz right now. This is a lot more recent because technology has been democratized, the solutions have flourished, and the cost of automation has become a little bit more affordable. At least it's now realistic and feasible to consider working with third-party vendors, with trusted partners to do automation and to take on some of the work that isn't necessary or isn't necessarily core to a business. It's important, it's critical, but it's often not something that companies may have time to focus on. Mm-hmm. So what we saw is that there's real value in being able to do a complete review of the processes. It's process mining, it's process mapping, it's process reengineering, and it's looking at ways to rethink our logic about processes that has proven to bring a lot of value. At IO, we build those digital workers, as we call them, which is really the assembly line for bots. And so we prepare those digital workers to answer those big questions that I was referring to earlier. we configure our digital workers to be responsible of the entire process um, of our partners. And often, again, it starts with processes that would be time consuming, that would be um, generated through certain types of rules that are repetitive and easily defined, and also processes where we tend to see manual errors, human errors, because the work is being done manually. So those some of the tasks that we're seeing would be, for example, logging in through application to confirm information, collect information from a particular website. Could be also downloading of information from one point to another, copy pasting, opening messages, sending notifications, filling forms. We have tons of examples of tasks that we were able to supplement with bots, and that we're able to now completely do and complete via bots, so that the team members can do more, let's say, rewarding tasks and value-added tasks. So we definitely see that value. And then one thing that is interesting in using bots for automation is that bots never get sick. So they don't take leaves, they don't ask for salary increases. They take most of the time they would take the consuming, frustrating, rule-based tasks that our team members are doing, so that they can focus on the more human side of their work, and again, more added value tasks. So that's how everybody is ending being in a win-win situation when it comes to automation.
So thanks, Flo. So that description of both complete and partial process components is really helpful, I think, especially if you talk about sort of starting perhaps with a part of a process rather than the entire process, and it can be simple or complex, it sounds like. And it's pretty clear there's a demand for automation. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and why you see that happening, and perhaps any other discussion around RPA, for example, robotic process automation, might be helpful, and if there's any distinction between RPA and other business process automation that you've just described.
Right. The automation of business processes is no longer just a luxury for larger businesses. I think initially we've seen that in large businesses, but the reality is it is rapidly becoming a necessary essential for businesses of all sizes to ensure sustainability and continued success on their end. So to your question on demand, we are seeing demand across all of our clients. We are seeing that it really starts at the top level. Every executive is thinking about it. Every executive is talking about it. And we're happy that we get to be in partnership with the main consideration of our partners in that regard, because again, we accompany that transformation, that transition that they're going through, where they have to start working with automation, and we get to support their initiative with what we have now. Robotic process automation, or RPA, is the evolution of the simple automation that we kind of were talking about earlier. It allows industries to automate tasks across various systems in a more, let's say, mature way. An industry that implements RPA can automate an entire workflow, no longer just tasks, but an entire workflow, infrastructure, or other back-end processes, which are mostly labor-intensive again and time-consuming. And you get to actually have let's say, intelligent robot, if that makes sense to us, but they get to start learning a little bit more by themselves. And that's something that we see a lot through RPAs. So again, industries of all sizes can automate their tasks with RPA, and it will completely eliminate then the human error component of it. They just need perhaps consider a QA mechanism just to ensure that everything is working fine, at least in the earlier stage of the journey, until confidence and trust is there so that the bots can just be left on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that we're incorporating QA as a component of many of the processes that we're automating for internally and for our clients. And I think it's a great way to fine tune things as they go along. What you were just talking about with respect to executives being aware, planning for, and integrating automation kind of lends itself toward the question of, what's in it for the clients. And I like the phrase that you use often, which is to do more with less, and automation's a key part of that. So as you look at our current client base for Infinit-O and many of the new clients that we're bringing on just to work on the technology side, such as automation and BI, what are you seeing as far as typical benefits that almost every company can relate to, both near term and long term?
Correct, absolutely. Do more with less is the easiest way of putting it. Again, I don't know of any organization that would not want to become more efficient, that would not want to leverage on the systems and technologies that are available out there at a reasonable cost to allow them to focus more on their core businesses. So do more with less is the key driver behind automation. And then no matter which type of automation solution do you decide to work with or to choose, often what the most common benefits that we are seeing would be around, again, improve operational efficiency, because automation can reduce time, effort, and cost, whilst reducing manual errors. Can also, as we just mentioned, give businesses more time to focus on what's really the primary objective or the primary whys of their existence. So we do see value there in terms of efficiency. We see value then in terms of time saving, because again, repetitive tasks can be done and completed faster. There's a real value in improving the quality and the consistency of the work that's being rendered. So again, automating processes can ensure that a high quality of result is constantly being produced, right? The output is always the same. That's the beauty, again, of working with bots and digital workers, is that the task is being performed faster, but also more consistently, and it's through and through. The other benefits that we get to see would be actually on the people side. There will be increased satisfaction from the team members, because again, they are able to do a work that is more meaningful, more engaging, and thus that increase the satisfaction of the team members. And finally, I think we also see value on customer satisfaction, because you have better processes, you have happier employees, because you're now able to really maximize the resources that you have at hand. We are seeing an increased focus on customer service, and so that helps boost the customer satisfaction. So again, at every level, from a business perspective, from an employee perspective, from a customer perspective, through all those different perspectives, we are seeing different types of values, and they're very much interlinked. And again, all businesses can benefit from it, right? There's not a single answer for all. It's not a one size fits all, but you can start small and you can expand. You can start from the finance end. You can start from the account payables processes that you have. You can start with your suppliers. You can start with your vendor onboarding. You can start with your team members onboarding. Again, at every level. I'm sure if we do a deep dive with our partners, and we did it for every processes that we were able to map, we were able to find areas of automation, areas of improvements that could be done through automation. And that's why we have actually more than we can chew at this point, but it's great. It's a great, because again, the team members are now the ones generating those ideas because they've been trained, they've been built up to identify those areas of improvement. So we are seeing an interesting lineup, and that's all we would want to see in it. And again, I'm sure our listeners are probably finding in their own processes areas of automations.
Mm-hmm. And areas that they may or may not even have the time or capability to take on, because it is a specific discipline to work on automation.
That's
and-
probably the biggest
Mhm.
element that would prevent any organization from jumping in automation. It requires an infrastructure, it requires a team, it requires available resources and headspace to be able to focus on those questions. And it's very much a snowball effect, meaning it starts small, it starts with trials and errors. And what we would see is that it will start slow at first, at least for our own automations and our own experience around automation. We've seen how it really started slow. So it started 2 years ago, and at first it was really building up slowly because we had to build the initial bots. We had to make sure that everything was working fine. We had to go through that QA process. But as soon as everything is lined up, that's where the scalability and the speed really kicks in. And so we are seeing that with our own experience, and now we get to kind of fast track that experience, that onboarding with partners, because again, they get to benefit from our own experience, and they can just switch on the key and ride on with the bots, digital workers that we were able to prepare, and so it's like it very much a turnkey solutions that gets available to them, so they get to have the benefits without having to go through the hurdle of what automation can be like.
Yeah, I mean that makes great sense, and and everything I see in here is usually it's limitations on bandwidth from within our client base and prospects, and know-how, and then looking at the alternative solutions out there. There's some very as you said, this is not necessarily new, but being affordable and fast and contextual is now something that we have jumped into the game on, based on all of our own experiences and seeing the obvious sort of gap in the market. So it gets to that question, why is Infinit-O now, not now, but more so now, really launching into automation? Because we've been using digital workers, as you described, for many of our own processes, doing more with less internally over these last years, and now moving that into the marketplace. It really lines up with our goal to provide strategic advantage to every client as they scale and as they grow and as they need to become more efficient. And we think specifically automation is one area where we can add value quickly and provide that advantage. Maybe you can tell us just a bit more about the value for our partners flow. I think where the rubber hits the road and meets the road is really where people love to hear more about that. And so if you can just tell us a little bit more about that value, appreciate it. Thank you.
And to do it, I'll start from the very first reason why I think Infinit-O exists, which is endless opportunities, something we've been repeating for the past 17 years. We want to create endless opportunities for our partners and our stakeholders. And as a result, there's a natural logic and development for us to be working with automations. And the reason why we are offering automation is because it creates value for our partners. Creating value has always been part of our DNA. So we offer our clients ways to scale their business by adding value, not by being a cost center, but again, by adding value. And it's only logical that we get to now do it with people and technology and no longer just people as we used to or as we started a long time ago. I think now the logic development is really to be able to offer people and technology as a combined solution, because it creates value for our partners. So for growing and fast growing companies, they have other priorities to focus on. And automation is critical to their business. They cannot do everything at once. And so they need a trusted partner to be able to do that. Outsourcing automation, that is now an effort that allows partners to focus on what is core to their business. We also do it for our own team members. It is good for our team members because it offers developmental path for growth, and it offers ability to learn new digital skills, which are more and more in demand, and put those skills to work. It allows them to take more advanced tasks, more added value tasks that allows them to be ready for the future of work. And we see how by being ready for the future of work, they are also ready to support and create value for our partners. So it is essential for IO's evolution, because it is indeed a world in motion and we're moving along with it. Our industry, the outsourcing industry, just like any other industry, is facing major changes, and we have to adapt to new ways of working. We have to adapt to new ways of operating, and we get to do it in conjunction with the partners that we support. And we see it again in the numbers. Like, we got a head start. Innovation has always been part of our commitments to clients since 2020, since 2005. But for the past 2 years, we've been very intentional about our digital and transformation initiatives, leading to, as of now, more than 6,600,000 minutes worth of time saved across all the automated processes. So that together, that's about 13 years that we got to save across all the different processes that we're doing for the past 2 years, right? That's millions in productivity gains. And as I was saying earlier, with the snowball effect, 70% of that value has been generated in the past 12 months only. So again, speed and scalability at its finest. We have the infrastructure and we have the expertise to create successful digital transformation for our partners. And that's why we want to provide this and support this. And I think I'll wrap up this question by going back to something that I've got to experience myself working in fintech and working with fast-growing companies. When it comes to innovation, when it comes to most of the transformation initiatives that a company would take, would fail. And if you want to have one good idea, you're going to need at least 10 to be able to get to one. And that's because, again, 7 out of 10 will probably be bad ideas, but you had to go through them to realize that they were bad. 2 are probably going to be acceptable, but only 1 is going to be truly exceptional. So that process is something that we take on, and we hope that by doing that homework on our end, we get to take it on also for our partners.
I mean, it's a real consultative approach that we take in order to get from the 10 down to the 1 or 2. I think that that's been how we've been able to make this really work internally as well as externally. One of the keys. And so that experience and know-how, it can help to whittle that number down, it sounds like. We talked about executive view on automation and over the digital transformation journey as one component, but also there are various stages that companies are in. There are some that have already taken a major steps in their journey, and probably some that we've seen that have processes that they want to automate that have stalled for a variety of reasons, sometimes even halfway through, just resource allocation and so forth, know-how, like we talked about. But if we were looking at a company and they just want to really jump back in or jumpstart for the first time, could you outline the basic steps that they would need to take besides call us, right?
Well, that would be the most obvious answer, but we wouldn't want to mention that right away. Right? No, I think it's interesting to look at it in two angles. I think you have to understand why most digital transformation initiatives would fail, to be able to really understand what would be the step forwards and understand what to do. And again, if you think of why transformation would fail, it's often because it's going too big, too fast. There's a real learning curve to digital transformation, and most companies would need to walk before they can run. The key is to start with modernization efforts that don't necessarily transform the whole business right away, right? Like whenever you do change in an organization, you need to accompany that change with some continuity. So it's a fine balance that you want to be able to find, so that you can start maybe with processes that aren't necessarily going to be very disruptive for the organization, but the ones that are going to modernize your organization. It's important that you start with something that, again, won't transform the whole business and won't necessarily create a whole new business with a lot of uncertainty, because that brings a lot of stress to the organization. But again, just create the capacity to succeed in more ambitious effort later on. So if you start with modernizing your processes, then you will be able to build up the expertise and the ability, the knowledge to really transform your company at a wider level. And that's really, step two. You look at it in ways that can create value across multiple functions. So you start small, you modernize, you start with functional processes before you go and expand into cross-functional processes. And so you will, if you want to really automate your order to cash process, for example, or if you want to improve your customer or employee experience, you can really start working with more advanced methods like Agile, so that you build up that culture of change, and you scale up the team members. And then once you have, once you're able to modernize and then transform the business, then that's when you can really think about scaling with the right partners. And then again, that scaling process can be done through more advanced and complex processes. It can also be done through potentially new business areas that can be found. Like we actually found ways to do business differently, right? It's about either you expand the pie that you are on as a business, or you create a whole new one. That's really where transformation can really help. But again, not thinking too big, too fast at first. Really go through modernization, transformation, and then scale those initiatives. And again, from a customer experience perspective, right, it could be that it is moving from selling products and services to finding new ways of working with subscription-based model. So you reinvent your business model. Could be that you start using transformation and those initiatives and starting to use data and analytics, business intelligence to accurately predict operational performance of products and systems. So there are a few areas where you can expand on once you start building that habit and that culture of change. So often digital transformation is inevitable. It's not really a matter of if, it's really a matter of when, and more importantly, how effectively can it be done.
Thank you, Flo. I really appreciate all of that detail and sort of really strategic view of automation, along with drilling down into some of the fine points. So it's been great dialing in the basics of the automation benefits, applications, and use cases, and of course, as you mentioned there, the inevitability of automation as a component of a business's successful long-term, well, as a business, as a component of their success. Yeah, you need a plan first, then that plan can become your destiny, which should hopefully be successful. And then lastly, with respect to the steps, it sounds like from our perspective, it's the first step is to reach out, reach out to a strong partner like us, Infinit-O. Talk about your goals and current ideas for automation, and then work with us to build out a plan as steps to have detailed discovery, and then collectively we build a plan and then execute on it, as you do with almost any good strategic element of your business. So I'm happy that we've been able to get together today and learn more about how Infinit-O has developed this as a core competency, and how we help our clients and other companies to get started, and how we can potentially assist with even current projects, perhaps that have stalled or just need to have a fresh look. So thank you again, Flo. Really appreciate it. And to all of the listeners out there, again, you can always look us up on infinito.com, and feel free to email us at info@infinit-o.com to open up that dialogue. Thank you again for tuning into this episode, and thank you, Flo.
Thank you, Mike.
And so until next time, this is Mike Gunyon from Infinit-O saying thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate it.
And that has been the Outsourcing Hub podcast, building great teams with Mike Gunyon. Thank you for tuning in. And always remember, start small, exceed expectations, think infinitely, think Infinit-O.